Look how beautiful she is. All hail the golden goddess.
In the village of Aquatia, there lived a young woman named Adjoa who was known far and wide for her exceptional beauty. Her skin gleamed like polished mahogany, her eyes sparkled like the morning dew, and her smile could make the bravest warrior's heart flutter. But beneath this beauty lay a heart as cold as harmattan. Adjoa had discovered early that her beauty was power, and she wielded it without mercy or conscience. Her first victim was Kwame, the blacksmith's son. He was a hard-working young man who saved every cowrie shell he earned, dreaming of the day he could marry Adjoa. 4 months, she smiled sweetly at him, accepted his gifts of yams and palm wine, and whispered promises of marriage under the baobab tree. "When you bring me 10 pieces of cloth and 20 baskets of grain, I will speak to my father," she told him, her voice like honey, her eyes sparkling with false affection. Kwame worked day and night, his hands blistered and bleeding from the forge. He ate only once a day to save money. He sold his best tools. When he finally presented the gifts to Adjoa, his face shining with hope and exhaustion, she looked at him as if seeing him for the first time. "You," she laughed loudly, making sure the other village girls could hear. "Marry a dirty, soot-covered blacksmith who smells of smoke? I was only being polite because I felt sorry for you. Did you actually believe someone as beautiful as me would marry someone as ugly as you?" The village girls shrieked with laughter as Kwame stood there, humiliated, his life's savings in Adjoa's hands. He walked away with his head bowed, and some say his eyes never regained their light. Adjoa divided the cloth and grain among her mother's household, adding to their growing wealth. That night, she and her friends laughed about Kwame's foolishness over palm wine. "Men are so stupid," Adjoa declared. "They see a pretty face and lose all sense. Why should I break my back working when I can get everything I need by just smiling?" Next came Yaw, the farmer's son. She promised him marriage if he would give her the money he'd saved to buy his own land. He did. She publicly rejected him at the market, calling him a dirt crawler who wasn't fit to touch her shadow. Then came Kofi, the trader, who gave her imported beads and fine oils. She took everything and told him he was too short and too poor for her standards. Then Mensa, the hunter, who brought her smoked meat and animal skins for months. She accepted it all, then told him he was too rough and uncivilized, that he smelled of blood and death. After Mensa came Kojo, then Kwabena, then Kwasi. 17 young men in total, each one given hope, each one methodically drained of his resources, each one publicly humiliated and broken. But Adjoa's cruelty didn't stop at simply rejecting them. She seemed to feed on their pain, to grow more vibrant with each heart she broke. When Yo lost his land because he'd given her his savings and couldn't pay his debts, she laughed about it in the market. "That fool chose me over dirt," she said loudly. "At least he has good taste, even if he has nothing else." When young Kojo, barely 18, became so depressed after her rejection that he stopped eating and grew thin and ill, Adjoa mocked him. "Look at the lovesick puppy," she would say when she saw him. "So weak. A real man would have moved on." Her room overflowed with cloth, jewelry, gold dust, and cowrie shells. Her mother's compound had enough grain to last 5 seasons. They had cooking pots made of brass, sleeping mats of the finest quality, and more wealth than some small chiefs. Yet Adjoa's appetite for more only grew stronger, and her heart grew harder. The village elders began to speak against her. Old Amma, the woman who sold kenki in the market, confronted her directly. "Child, what you are doing is evil," Amma said, her weathered face stern. "You are destroying lives. These are not just gifts you're taking, you're stealing these young men's futures, their hope, their dignity. The ancestors are watching, and they will not let this continue." Adjoa looked at the old woman with contempt. "You're just a jealous old hag. she spat. You're bitter because you're ugly and poor, and I'm beautiful and rich. Don't speak to me about the ancestors. If they cared, they would have made you pretty. She turned and walked away, leaving old Amma shaking her head sadly. Even her own mother tried to intervene. Adjoa, my daughter, this is wrong. I raised you better than this. You must stop. Some of these young men have been seriously hurt. Kwame barely speaks anymore. You lost everything. You're bringing a curse on our family. Adjoa's eyes flashed with anger. A curse? Mother, look around you. Look at this compound. Look at our wealth. We're living better than the chief's family, and I didn't have to marry anyone or work in any fields to get it. I'm smarter than every woman in this village. They break their backs for their husbands, and what do they get? I get everything without giving anything. Daughter, please. Enough. Adjoa shouted. If you don't want to enjoy what I bring, I can find somewhere else to live. But stop trying to make me feel guilty for being clever. Her mother said nothing more, but she prayed to the ancestors every night, begging them to soften her daughter's heart before it was too late. The village priest came to warn her. Adjoa, I have consulted the oracle. The spirits are angry with you. You must make amends, return what you've taken, and change your ways. If you don't. If I don't what? Adjoa interrupted, her voice dripping with scorn. Will lightning strike me? Will I turn into a chicken? These are just stories to scare children. I don't believe in your oracle or your spirits. I believe in what I can see and touch, and I can see that I'm the richest young woman in this village. She laughed in the priest's face and walked away. That night, she threw a feast for her friends, serving the best food and palm wine, all purchased with her ill-gotten wealth. They ate and drank and laughed, and Adjoa was the center of attention, beautiful and terrible in her pride. To foolish men, she toasted, raising her calabash. May they continue to be stupid enough to make us rich. Her friends cheered, though some looked uncomfortable. They benefited from Adjoa's schemes. She shared her wealth generously with those who admired her, but even they were beginning to feel that something was wrong, that they were participating in something dark. By now, Adjoa's reputation had spread to neighboring villages. Mothers warned their sons about her. But Adjoa didn't care. She began traveling to other villages, looking for new victims who hadn't heard the stories. It was in one of these villages that she met Kabina, a gentle young man who carved beautiful stools and masks. He fell instantly under her spell, and Adjoa saw an easy target. She was more vicious with Kabina than with any of the others. She made him give her not just his savings, but his best tools, the ones his late father had left him. She convinced him to sell his deceased mother's jewelry. She took everything he had, including a special mask he'd carved for his future wife, a piece he'd worked on for 2 years. When she had extracted everything of value, she didn't just reject him. She invited him to what he thought would be their engagement ceremony. When he arrived with his few remaining relatives, dressed in his best clothes, hopeful and nervous, Adjoa stood before everyone and mocked him. "Did you really think I would marry you?" she said, her voice loud and cruel. "Look at you, a poor woodcarver with nothing to his name because you were stupid enough to give it all to me. You're pathetic. You're beneath me. You're not even worthy to be my servant." She held up the beautiful mask he'd carved and laughed at it. "This ugly thing? You thought this was beautiful? It looks like something a child would make." Kabina's face crumbled. His relatives tried to lead him away, but he stood there, tears streaming down his face, unable to move. "Look at him crying like a baby." Adjoa shrieked with laughter. "A grown man crying. This is the kind of weakling who wanted to marry me." That night, Kabina walked into the forest and was never seen again. Search parties found his sandals by the river. Most believed he had thrown himself in. When news reached Adjoa, she shrugged. "If he was that weak, it's not my fault," she said coldly. "I didn't force him to do anything. He gave me those things because he wanted to." But something had shifted in the village. People no longer looked at Adjoa with envy or admiration. They looked at her with fear and disgust. Even her friends began to distance themselves. Adjoa didn't care. She had her wealth, her beauty, and her pride. That was enough. One market day, as Adjoa sat under the mango tree, admiring the new gold bangles on her wrists, a stranger arrived in the village. He was magnificent. Tall and imposing, dressed in Kent cloth so fine it seemed to shimmer with its own light. Gold adorned his neck, wrists, and fingers, more gold than anyone in the village had ever seen on one person. His face was handsome beyond measure, his bearing regal. Every woman in the market stopped to stare. Even the men paused in their work to look at this impressive stranger. His eyes swept across the market and stopped on Adjoa. A slow smile spread across his face. "Who is that vision of beauty?" he asked in a deep, resonant voice. Adjoa's heart leaped. Finally, a man who truly matched her worth. A man whose wealth could eclipse even what she'd already accumulated. She could see it now, leaving this small village behind, living in a great city, draped in silk and gold, the envy of everyone. "I am Adjoa," she said, standing gracefully, making sure he could see her full beauty. "I am Owo," the stranger said, bowing slightly. "And I have traveled far and wide across many kingdoms. Never have I seen a woman as beautiful as you." "You have excellent taste," Adjoa replied, her voice honey-sweet, her predatory instincts already awakening. This one would be her greatest conquest yet. For the next 3 weeks, Owo courted Adjoa with an intensity that surprised even her. He brought gifts that made everything she'd collected before seem like trinkets: silk from distant lands, perfumes in crystal bottles, jewelry of intricate gold and precious stones, even a small chest of pure gold dust. "You deserve only the finest things," Owo told her, his dark eyes never leaving her face. "A woman of your beauty should want for nothing." "I agree completely," Adjoa said, already calculating. With this man's wealth, she could demand an enormous bride price, take it, and disappear to another region entirely. Start fresh with more wealth than she'd ever dreamed. "I want to marry you," Owo declared on the 21st day. "Name your bride price. Whatever it is, I will pay it." Adjoa pretended to consider carefully, though her mind was racing. She would demand something outrageous, more than anyone had ever asked for. 200 gold pieces, she said boldly, watching his face for any sign of hesitation. 20 cows, 50 goats, 100 pieces of the finest cloth, and enough grain to fill my mother's storage house to the roof. It was an absurd amount, a bride price fit for a chief's daughter marrying a king. Owo didn't even blink. "Done," he said immediately. "I will bring everything tomorrow evening. But there is one condition." Adjoa's eyes narrowed slightly, but she smiled. "What condition?" "Where I come from, the bride must receive her bride price in private, at sunset, before it is presented to her family. It is our custom, so the bride can verify that everything is as promised before the formal presentation. Meet me at the crossroads outside the village tomorrow as the sun sets. Bring no one with you. If you are satisfied with what I bring, we will go together to your father and make this official." Adjoa hesitated for only a moment. The crossroads at sunset, it was an unusual request. The crossroads were known as a powerful place, where the spirit world and the living world touched. But her greed overwhelmed any caution. "Very well," she agreed. "I will be there." That night, Adjoa could barely sleep. She spent hours planning what she would do with the wealth. She would take everything, of course, and disappear. Maybe she'd go to the coast, to one of the big trading towns where no one knew her. With that much wealth, she could live like royalty for the rest of her life. The next day passed agonizingly slowly. Adjoa dressed in her finest cloth, all acquired through her deceptions, and adorned herself with the best jewelry Owo had given her. As the sun began to sink toward the horizon, she told her mother she was going to visit a friend and slipped out of the compound. The crossroads lay just outside the village, where 4 paths met. It was a place of power, where travelers left offerings and priests performed certain ceremonies. As evening approached, most villagers avoided it. Adjoa arrived just as the sun touched the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and red like fire. Owo was already there, standing perfectly still in the center of the crossroads. Around him were chests and bags, her bride price, she assumed. "My beautiful bride," he said, and something in his voice made her shiver despite the warm evening air. "I have brought everything you asked for." He gestured to the chest. 200 gold pieces. 20 cows, see them there in that clearing? 50 goats. 100 pieces of cloth. And enough grain to fill any storage house. Adjoa's eyes widened. It was all there. More wealth than she'd ever seen in one place. Her heart pounded with excitement and greed. She stepped forward eagerly, reaching for the nearest chest. Owo said, holding up one hand. "Not yet. First, we must complete the ceremony. This is also our custom." "What ceremony?" Adjoa asked impatiently, her eyes still on the wealth before her. "You must answer 3 questions truthfully," Owo said, his voice changing slightly, becoming hollow and strange. "If you answer truthfully, all of this is yours. If you lie, well, we shall see." Adjoa laughed. "Ask whatever you want. I'm not afraid of questions." The sun slipped lower. Shadows grew longer. The air grew colder. "First question," Owo said, and as he spoke, his form began to shimmer strangely in the fading light. "How many men have you deceived and destroyed for your own gain?" Adjoa waved her hand dismissively. "I don't know. I didn't keep count. What does it matter? They were fools." 17, Owo said softly. 17 young men whose lives you've deliberately ruined. Whose savings you've stolen. Whose hope you've crushed. One of whom is now dead because of you. "That wasn't my fault," Adjoa said quickly, feeling the first flutter of unease. "He was weak. I didn't force him to do anything." Second question, Owo continued, and now his face was definitely changing, becoming something else, something that made Adjoa's blood run cold. "Do you feel any remorse? Any guilt for what you've done?" Adjoa opened her mouth to lie, to say yes, but something stopped her. Whether it was the way Owo's eyes seemed to see into her soul, or some power of the crossroads, the truth came out instead. "No," she said, and her voice sounded small and harsh. "I don't. They deserved it for being stupid. I'm smarter and more beautiful than everyone else. Why should I feel guilty for using what I was given?" The sun touched the horizon. The world around them grew dim. Third question, Owo said, and now his form was clearly not human anymore. He was taller, darker, his edges seeming to blur into shadow. His voice echoed as if coming from everywhere at once. "If I gave you the chance to change, to give it all back and live differently, would you?" This time Adjoa didn't hesitate. "No," she shouted, her true nature fully revealed now that she thought she was about to claim her greatest prize. "Why would I? I've lived better than anyone in my village. I've had everything I wanted without having to submit to any man, without having to work in fields or cook or clean. I'm not sorry, and I would do it all again." The sun disappeared below the horizon. Darkness fell like a curtain. Owo threw back his head and laughed, and it was the sound of wind through empty houses, of vultures circling, of earth falling on coffins. "At last," he said, his voice no longer beautiful but terrible, "you speak the full truth of who you are." His form shifted completely now. He became something ancient and dark, a figure of shadow and bone. Around them, the crossroads came alive. Spirits materialized from the darkness. Ancestors, beings of the other world, and among them, the shades of the 17 young men whose lives Adjoa had destroyed. "I am Owo," the being said, and Adjoa's legs nearly gave out as she realized what that name meant. "Owo, death itself. I am the one who collects the debts that the living refuse to pay." "No," Adjoa whispered, trying to back away, but finding herself unable to move. "No, please." "Did Kabina say, 'please,' when he begged you not to humiliate him?" Death asked. "Did Kwame say, 'please,' when you laughed at his poverty?" "You were given every chance, Adjoa. The elders warned you. The priest warned you. Even your own mother warned you. But you laughed at them all." The spirits moved closer, forming a circle around her. Adjoa could see Kabina's shade among them, his eyes sad and empty. "I wanted to give you everything," she screamed. "Look at all this wealth. I could have been rich. Look closer, Death said. Adjoa looked at the chests, the bags of gold. As she watched, they began to change. The gold pieces became dried leaves. The cloth became spiderwebs. The cows and goats were nothing but shadows. It had all been illusion. The bride price was real, Death said, but it was not what you thought. You asked for 200 gold pieces, you will receive 200 days of suffering, one for each piece. 20 cows, 20 years of wandering as a warning to others. 50 goats, 50 lashes of conscience that will strike you each time you see your reflection. 100 pieces of cloth, 100 nights of nightmares. And enough grain to fill your storage house. You will fill it with your tears. Please. Adjoa begged now, falling to her knees, her pride finally cracking. I'm sorry. I'll change. I'll give it all back. Now you're sorry? Death asked, and there was no mercy in his voice. Only now, when you face consequences. You were given countless chances to feel remorse, to change your path. Every warning, every plea from those who cared about you, you rejected them all with contempt. You didn't want to change. You wanted to continue hurting others forever. He leaned closer, his form towering over her. You cannot apologize your way out of who you truly are, Adjoa. You revealed your true heart with your own words. You feel no remorse, and you would do it all again. Very well. You will get your wish. Death raised his hand, and Adjoa felt a terrible transformation beginning. Your beauty, which you weaponized without conscience, will remain, Death said. But it will become your prison. You will wander from village to village, and people will see you and know your story. Your face will become famous, not as a vision of beauty to desire, but as a warning to others. Adjoa felt her body changing, felt something fundamental changing inside her. You will never age, never die, never find rest, Death continued. You will walk these lands for generations, and wherever you go, your story will follow you. Mothers will point you out to their daughters and say, there is the greedy maiden who destroyed 17 lives and felt no shame. Young women who are tempted to use their beauty cruelly will see you and learn what happens to those who cannot feel remorse. You will be hungry but never starve, thirsty but never die of thirst, tired but never allowed to sleep peacefully. You will remember every face of every person you hurt, and their pain will be your constant companion. And you will live forever, watching the world change around you, always alone, always recognized, always scorned. No! Adjoa screamed. Please just let me die. Let me die.
Death is a mercy, Owo said coldly. And mercy is for those who show mercy to others. You showed none. You will receive none. The spirits began to chant in a language Adjoa didn't understand. The ground beneath her feet began to glow with strange symbols. She felt herself being marked, branded with her crimes in a way that would be visible to anyone with eyes to see. One more thing, Death said, and now his voice carried the weight of final judgment. All the wealth you accumulated through your cruelty, it will turn to dust. Your mother's house, which you filled with your stolen goods, will be emptied. Everything you touched with your greed will crumble to nothing. You will wander with nothing but the cloth on your back and the memory of what you've done. The chanting grew louder. The light grew brighter. Adjoa felt herself being pulled, stretched, changed into something that was neither fully alive nor truly dead. Go, Death commanded. Walk these lands forever as a warning. And know that every time someone sees you and turns away from cruelty because of your example, you will feel it like a knife in your heart. Not because it brings you pain, but because it reminds you that you could have chosen differently and you refused. Adjoa ran home that night with trembling legs, pretending the encounter meant nothing. She slammed her door, wrapped herself in her finest cloth, and whispered to herself, "No curse can touch me. I am too beautiful, too desired, too clever." But sleep did not come easily. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Owo's face. Hollow, grinning, patient. She heard his voice echoing through her skull. When beauty becomes a weapon, death collects the debt. Her body shivered though the night was warm. The shadows in her room stretched and twisted like living things. And though she forced herself to sleep, something changed within her. quietly, invisibly. The next day, she awoke with a pounding headache. Her bones felt heavy. Her skin prickled as though ants crawled beneath it. She ignored it. By evening, her lips burned and cracked. Her eyes watered. Her breath came out sharp and sour. Still, she refused to speak of it. When her friends visited, she sat upright, forcing a bright smile, but her hands shook as she lifted her calabash. A friend frowned. "Adjoa, you look tired." "I am fine," she snapped. "Just heat. My beauty is stronger than any curse." But that night, the fever returned. One morning, Adjoa woke up and picked her calabash before stepping out of her door to get water from the river stream. The moment she stepped outside, women dropped their calabashes. Children ran away crying. Even the goats scattered. Her once flawless skin, smooth as polished mahogany, was covered in angry black boils that oozed thick pus and burned like fire ants beneath her flesh. Her lips cracked and bled. Her hair, once long and glossy, fell out in fistfuls, scattering across the clay floor like dry, dead weeds. Her beauty, the weapon she used to destroy others, was vanishing, piece by piece. By midday, news had spread across Aquatia. Her friends, who once ate her food and laughed at her jokes, were the first to disappear. They whispered that evil had finally claimed its owner. The young men she had humiliated spat at her feet when she begged for help. "Stay away," they said. "You smell like death." Her mother fed her in silence, tears sliding down her cheeks, but never speaking a word. Not anger, not comfort, only grief. A mother mourning the daughter she could no longer recognize. People in the village argued about what had happened. Some said the ancestors had grown weary of her wickedness. Others said that a heart soaked in cruelty will eventually poison the body that carries it. But the cruelest punishment came the day Adjoa gathered what remained of her dignity and stepped outside, hoping someone, anyone, would show pity. She reached out to a young man passing by, the same type she once wrapped around her finger with a single smile. He recoiled as if she were a curse. "Love something so ugly," he hissed. "Not even the blind would come near you." They were her own words, returned like a knife. Adjoa went back inside and never came out again. Day after day, she sat in her room surrounded by piles of cloth, beads, gold, baskets of grain, riches collected from the hearts she shattered. But none of it could heal her. None of it could save her. None of it could make anyone love her. Her reflection became her greatest enemy. She covered every mirror in cloth, unable to bear the monster staring back. And so, slowly, the village forgot her. Her beauty turned to memory, then rumor, then warning. Adjoa lived her days hidden from the world, rotting from the inside out, her wealth as useless as dust.
Subscribe for more amazing stories on this channel.